The transport shuttle Meridian's edge shuddered as it broke through Chemia's upper atmosphere, its engines groaning against the planet's unusual electromagnetic field. Ethan Cross pressed his face to the viewport, watching swirls of amber and violet clouds part to reveal the rust-colored landscape below. Somewhere down there, buried beneath millions of years of sediment and time, lay the ruins that had consumed his thoughts for the better part of 2 years. "First time on Chemia?" asked the shuttle pilot, a grizzled woman whose weathered hands moved across the controls with practiced ease. "First time anywhere this far out," Ethan admitted, settling back into his seat as the craft descended toward the landing pad. "I've spent most of my career digging around Earth's old cities. Never thought I'd be studying alien archaeology." The pilot chuckled. "Well, you picked one hell of a place to start. Those ruins down there have been puzzling researchers for decades. Beautiful, but strange. Sometimes the local electromagnetic storms make the crystalline structures light up, like festival decorations." Ethan nodded, though his attention had already shifted to the collection of prefabricated buildings growing larger in the viewport. Chemia Research Station looked exactly like what it was, a temporary scientific outpost, designed for function over comfort. Solar collectors and communication arrays sprouted from every available surface, while sealed walkways connected the various modules like arteries in some mechanical organism. The landing was rougher than Ethan expected, the shuttle bouncing twice before settling onto the designated pad with a final thump. As the engines wound down, he gathered his gear and made his way to the airlock, where a tall figure in environmental gear waited to greet him. "Ethan Cross?" the figure asked, pulling off their helmet to reveal a human face marked by laugh lines and premature gray at the temples. "I'm Juno Hayes, station coordinator. Welcome to the edge of nowhere. Glad to be here," Ethan replied, though he wasn't entirely sure that was true. The isolation of this place was already pressing against him like a physical weight. "How's the team working out?" "Better than expected, actually. We've got a good mix of specialists, and everyone's eager to crack the mystery of these ruins." Juno led him through the airlock and into a corridor that hummed with recycled air and electrical systems. "Speaking of which, I should mention we've got someone special on the team, Naya Severin, our linguistics specialist. She's not human." Ethan raised an eyebrow. Interspecies cooperation in academic settings was still relatively new, though it was becoming more common as various galactic civilizations opened diplomatic and cultural exchanges. "What's her background?" "Brilliant mind for ancient languages and symbolic systems." "Her people?" "The Velani have some natural advantages when it comes to pattern recognition and linguistic analysis. She requested assignment to this project specifically." Juno paused at a junction in the corridor. "Fair warning though, she's a bit reserved. Takes time to warm up to new people." They continued through the station, passing laboratories filled with scanning equipment, storage areas packed with excavation gear, and common areas where researchers clustered around holographic displays showing three-dimensional maps of the ruins. Everything had the efficient, cramped feeling of a facility built for purpose rather than comfort. "Here's your quarters," Juno said, stopping at a door marked with Ethan's name. "Nothing fancy, but you've got your own space and access to the research networks. Dinner's at 1800 hours. Good chance to meet everyone." Ethan dropped his bags in the small but adequate room, noting the reinforced window that looked out over the dig site. Even from this distance, he could see the crystalline spires jutting from the excavated areas, their surfaces catching and reflecting the light of Chemia's setting sun in ways that seemed almost deliberate. The mess hall buzzed with conversation. When Ethan arrived for dinner, researchers from half a dozen different institutions comparing notes and theories over plates of synthetic protein and hydroponic vegetables. He was scanning the room for an empty seat when his attention was caught by a figure sitting alone near the far wall. She was unlike anyone he'd ever seen. Her skin held a subtle blue-silver luminescence that seemed to shift in the artificial lighting, and intricate patterns traced along her arms and neck in lines that looked almost like circuitry. Her hair fell in waves of deep indigo, and when she looked up from her meal, her eyes were the color of distant nebulae, purple-blue depths that seemed to hold starlight. "That's Naya," said a voice beside him. Ethan turned to find a stocky man, with calloused hands extending a plate. Rex Volan, Geological Survey. She's been here about a month longer than anyone else, studying the preliminary inscriptions we uncovered. She looks. Ethan searched for the right word. Otherworldly. Yeah. The Volani tend to have that effect. Beautiful people. But there's something about them that makes you feel like they're seeing things you can't. Rex lowered his voice. Between you and me, I think there's more to her interest in these ruins than pure academic curiosity. She gets this look sometimes when she's working with the inscriptions, like she's remembering something instead of learning it. Before Ethan could respond, Juno's voice cut through the dinner conversation. Attention everyone. I'd like you to meet our new team member, Ethan Cross, specialist in pre-technological civilizations and symbolic archaeology. Ethan. This is the crew that's going to help you unlock the secrets of Chemia. A chorus of greetings rose from the assembled researchers, and Ethan found himself shaking hands and exchanging pleasantries with geologists, technicians, and fellow archaeologists. Throughout the introductions, he found his attention drifting back to Naya, who had returned to her meal but seemed to be listening to every word. And last but certainly not least, Juno said, approaching Naya's table, meet Naya Severin, our linguistics specialist. Naya, this is Ethan Cross. She stood gracefully, extending a hand that felt surprisingly warm despite her cool appearance. Her grip was firm, and Ethan noticed that the patterns on her skin seemed to pulse faintly at the contact. Welcome to Chemia, Ethan Cross, she said, her voice carrying a musical quality that made his name sound like part of a song. I look forward to working with you. Likewise, he managed, suddenly feeling tongue-tied in a way that hadn't happened to him since graduate school. Juno mentioned you specialize in ancient languages. Have you made progress with the inscriptions? Naya's expression shifted subtly, and for just a moment, Ethan thought he saw something guarded flicker behind her eyes. Some progress, yes. The symbolic structure is complex. Perhaps we could discuss it tomorrow, when you've had time to review the preliminary findings. Of course, I'm eager to dive in. She nodded and gathered her meal tray. Then I shall see you in the morning. The ruins are most active at dawn. You'll want to experience that. As she walked away, Ethan found himself watching the fluid grace of her movement. The way her luminescent patterns seemed to respond to her emotions like a visual language he couldn't read. Word of advice, Rex said quietly, rejoining him. Don't stare too long. The Volani consider prolonged eye contact a form of intimacy. You might give her the wrong idea. Ethan felt heat rise in his cheeks, noted, thanks. But as he finished his dinner and made his way back to his quarters, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that there was something significant about Naya Severin. Beyond her obvious expertise, the way she'd spoken about the ruins being active, the careful way she'd chosen her words about the inscriptions, it all suggested she knew more than she was saying. Standing at his window, looking out at the ruins silhouetted against Chemia's star-filled sky, Ethan felt a familiar thrill of anticipation. Every archaeological dig held the promise of discovery, but this one felt different. Whether it was the alien nature of the civilization they were studying, the isolation of their location, or the enigmatic presence of Naya Severin, something told him that Chemia was going to change everything. Tomorrow, he would begin unraveling the mysteries buried in the crystalline structures below. What he didn't know was that the greatest mystery of all would turn out to be his new partner, and that solving it would require him to question everything he thought he knew about love, purpose, and the connections that bind beings together across the vast darkness of space. Dawn on Chemia painted the sky in shades of copper and gold, the twin suns casting long shadows across the excavation site. Ethan stood at the edge of the main dig, watching teams of researchers emerge from the underground chambers like ants from a disturbed hill. The ruins were indeed more active in the morning light. Crystalline formations that had seemed dormant the night before now pulsed with faint inner luminescence. Impressive, isn't it? Naya's voice came from behind him, soft but clear in the crisp morning air. He turned to find her approaching with 2 steaming cups of what he assumed was coffee, though the liquid held an unusual blue-green tint. She wore form-fitting exploration gear that highlighted the elegant lines of her figure. and her luminescent patterns seemed brighter in the natural light. "Thank you," he said, accepting the cup gratefully. The liquid was warm and energizing, with a flavor somewhere between mint and something floral he couldn't identify. What exactly makes them more active in the morning? The electromagnetic interaction between Chemia's magnetic field and the binary star system creates fluctuations that the crystalline matrix responds to, she explained, settling beside him on a convenient boulder. But that's the scientific explanation. Sometimes I think they're simply awakening. Ethan studied her profile as she gazed at the ruins. There was something almost reverent in her expression, as if she were looking at a sacred site rather than an archaeological dig. "You speak about them like they're alive." Naya was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing unconscious patterns. On the surface of her cup, "My people believe that consciousness can exist in many forms. Perhaps these structures retain some echo of their creator's intentions." Before Ethan could probe deeper into that intriguing statement, Juno Hayes appeared at the rim of the excavation pit, waving them over. "Ethan, Naya, we're ready for the deep survey. Chamber 7 is finally accessible, and the scanning equipment is showing some interesting anomalies." They made their way down the carefully constructed walkways that wound between the exposed crystalline structures up close. The formations were even more remarkable, perfectly geometric yet organic in their flowing curves, as if mathematics had been taught to grow like living things. Ethan noticed that Naya moved through the site with unusual confidence, never hesitating at intersections or pausing to check directional markers. "Have you been down this deep before?" he asked as they descended a spiral ramp carved into the living rock. "A few times," she replied, but her tone suggested there was more to the story. "The lower chambers have been calling to me, Rex." Volan was waiting for them at the entrance to Chamber 7, his geological scanner beeping insistently. "Whatever's down there, it's putting out energy signatures unlike anything we've cataloged. The resonance patterns are almost musical." The chamber entrance was sealed by what appeared to be a smooth wall of the same crystalline material, but as they approached, sections began to shift and flow like liquid, creating an opening just wide enough for a person to pass through. "How does it know we're here?" Ethan wondered aloud. "Proximity sensors, maybe," Rex suggested, though he sounded doubtful. "Or it could be responding to our bioelectric fields." Naya said nothing, but Ethan noticed her hand was pressed against her chest, over her heart, and the patterns on her skin were pulsing in rhythm with the opening wall. Beyond the entrance lay a corridor that curved gently downward, its walls covered in intricate inscriptions that seemed to shift and flow when viewed peripherally. Emergency lighting cast harsh shadows, but the inscriptions themselves provided a soft, ambient glow. "These symbols," Ethan breathed, pulling out his portable scanner. "They're not like anything in our database. The complexity is incredible." Naya moved closer to the wall, her fingers hovering just above the surface of the inscriptions. As she traced the air above them, the symbols brightened responsively. "They're not just decorative," she murmured. "They're instructions, a guide." "Instructions for what?" Juno asked, her voice echoing strangely in the enclosed space. "I'm not entirely sure yet," Naya admitted, but Ethan caught the slight hesitation in her voice. "The linguistic structure is unlike anything I've encountered before, yet somehow familiar." They continued deeper into the chamber system, their footsteps muffled by the strange acoustic properties of the crystalline walls. The air itself seemed to hum with barely audible frequencies that Ethan felt more than heard. Beside him, Naya moved with increasing certainty, as if following a path only she could see. "There," she said suddenly, stopping before what appeared to be a blank section of wall. "There's something behind here, something important." Rex ran his scanner over the area, frowning at the readings. "You're right, there's definitely a void space, but I don't see any kind of access mechanism." Naya stepped forward, placing both hands flat against the wall. The moment her palms made contact, the inscriptions around them flared to brilliant life, and a section of the wall began to dissolve away like morning mist. "How did you know?" Ethan asked, staring at her in amazement. Naya seemed as surprised as anyone. "I felt it, like a resonance, matching something inside me." The newly revealed chamber was smaller than the others they'd explored, but it hummed with active energy. In the center stood a pedestal supporting what looked like a three-dimensional constellation of floating crystal nodes, each one pulsing with its own inner light. "My God," Juno whispered, "it's still functional after all this time." As they entered the chamber, the crystalline array responded to their presence, the nodes shifting position and changing color. But Ethan noticed that the responses were strongest when Naya moved, as if the ancient technology was somehow attuned to her specifically. "Naya," he said carefully, "is there something you're not telling us about your connection to these ruins?" She turned to face him, and in the fluctuating light of the crystal ray, her luminescent patterns were clearly visible, pulsing in perfect synchronization with the ancient technology around them. "I wasn't certain until now," she said quietly, "but my people, the Villani, were not originally from our current home world. Our oldest histories speak of an ancient migration, fleeing some great catastrophe. The patterns, the language structures, even the way this technology responds to me." She paused, her voice barely above a whisper. "I think we're the descendants of whoever built this place." The implications of her revelation settled over the group like a heavy blanket. If Naya was right, then they weren't just studying the ruins of an extinct civilization. They were exploring her ancestral home. "That's why you requested assignment to this project," Ethan realized. "You were searching for traces of your people's origin." Naya nodded, tears glistening in her star-colored eyes. "My grandmother used to tell stories about the crystal cities of the first home. I thought they were just legends until I saw the preliminary reports about Chemia." The crystal ray suddenly flared brighter, and new symbols began appearing. On the chamber walls, not the static inscriptions they'd seen elsewhere, but flowing, dynamic text that seemed to be writing itself in real time. "It's responding to your presence," Rex said in amazement, "like it's been waiting for someone like you to return." As Naya approached the central array, Ethan found himself watching her with new eyes. She wasn't just a colleague anymore, or even just the brilliant and beautiful alien woman who had captured his attention. She was someone searching for her roots, her identity, her place in the vast tapestry of galactic history. "What does it say?" Juno asked, indicating the flowing text. Naya studied the symbols, her expression shifting from confusion to wonder to something approaching fear. "It's a warning," she said finally, "about something called the silence that devours." And she paused, reading further. "It mentions guardians, those chosen to protect the knowledge from those who would misuse it." Before anyone could ask what that meant, Rex's communication device crackled to life. "Rex, this is Surface Team. We've got incoming ships, 3 vessels, military configuration, approaching fast." They're not responding to hails. Ethan felt his heart sink. Word of their discovery must have leaked somehow, attracting the attention of those who saw ancient alien technology as something to be exploited rather than studied. "We need to get back to the surface," Juno said, but Naya was shaking her head. "No," she said firmly, "we can't let them have access to this chamber. If what the inscriptions say is true, the knowledge here could be dangerous in the wrong hands." She moved to the crystal array, and as her hands neared the floating nodes, they began to respond, spinning faster and glowing brighter. "What are you doing?" Ethan asked, stepping closer to her. "What I was meant to do," she replied, her voice filled with new certainty. "I'm the guardian this place has been waiting for." As the crystal ray reached resonance with Naya's touch, the chamber filled with harmonious tones that seemed to sing in frequencies that touched the soul. Ethan found himself drawn to her side, not just by the beauty of the moment, but by the profound realization that he was witnessing something extraordinary. A woman discovering her destiny, her purpose, her true self, and in that crystalline chamber, surrounded by the echoes of an ancient civilization, Ethan Cross began to understand that his feelings for Naya Severin went far. The crystal array hummed with increasing intensity as Naya's hands moved among the floating nodes, each touch sending cascades of light through the chamber's walls. Ethan watched in fascination as the ancient symbols began rearranging themselves, forming new patterns that seemed to pulse with life. "Naya, what's happening?" he asked, stepping closer as the harmonious tones grew stronger. "It's awakening," she breathed, her luminescent patterns now blazing so brightly they rivaled the crystal array itself. The entire complex is coming online. I can feel it spreading through the underground network, chamber by chamber, above them. Rex's communication device crackled again, with urgent voices from the surface. Surface team to underground crew. Those ships have landed. Armed personnel are disembarking. Looks like salvage operators, not military. They're heading for the main entrance. Juno moved toward the chamber exit. We need to evacuate now. If they're pirates looking for technology to steal. Wait, Naya interrupted, her voice taking on an otherworldly quality as she interfaced deeper with the crystal array. There's someone here, someone who's been waiting. The air in the chamber began to shimmer, and slowly, translucent figures began materializing around them. Ethan's breath caught as he realized they were looking at holographic projections of the ancient civilization, tall, graceful beings who bore a striking resemblance to Naya, their skin marked with the same luminescent patterns, their eyes holding the same star-filled depths. One of the figures, apparently female, stepped forward and began speaking in a melodious language that Ethan didn't recognize, but somehow felt familiar. Naya listened intently, her eyes widening with each word. "What is she saying?" Ethan asked quietly. She's telling me our history," Naya whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "The true history. My people, the Villani, we weren't just refugees from a dying world. We were the chosen ones, selected to carry the knowledge and genetic heritage of the Hemian civilization to safety among the stars." The holographic figure gestured to the crystal array, and new symbols appeared. In the air around them, star charts, genetic sequences, technological schematics that hurt to look at directly. They called themselves the Fistory, Naya continued, her voice filled with wonder. They were master builders, philosophers, guardians of knowledge that could reshape the galaxy. But they foresaw a great darkness coming, something they called the silence that devours, and they knew their time was ending. Another holographic figure joined the first, this one clearly male, with kind eyes and intricate patterns that covered his entire body. When he spoke, Naya gasped. "What?" Ethan asked urgently. He's my ancestor. Direct lineage. His name was Corvain Ethes, and he was one of the last keepers of the crystal cities." Naya's hands moved instinctively to her chest, where her patterns were pulsing in perfect synchronization with the hologram. "He's telling me that I carry more than just their genetic heritage. I carry their memories, their knowledge locked away in my very cells." The chamber suddenly shook as explosions echoed from above. Rex's communicator burst to life with panicked voices. "They're using plasma cutters on the entrance seals, Ethan, Naya. Whatever you're doing down there, they're going to be through in minutes." The holographic Fistory began speaking more urgently, their forms flickering as if the energy maintaining them was being disrupted by the activity above. "They're warning me," Naya said, her voice taking on a note of urgency. "The knowledge stored in this complex, it's not just historical records. It's active technology, including weapons that could devastate entire star systems. That's what the pirates are really after." Ethan felt ice form in his stomach. "Can you shut it down? Prevent them from accessing it?" Naya's expression was torn. Between determination and fear, there's a way, but she paused. Listening to the holographic Corvain, it requires a full neural interface with the crystal matrix. I would become the guardian in truth, bonded permanently to the complex. I might not survive the process. Absolutely not, Ethan said immediately, stepping between Naya and the crystal array. There has to be another way. She looked at him with surprise, then something softer. "Ethan, this is what I was meant for. This is why my people have carried the genetic markers for generations. Why I was drawn here. I can't let this knowledge fall into the wrong hands, and I can't let you sacrifice yourself for it." He replied firmly, "Not when we've just found each other." The admission hung in the air between them, unexpected and raw. Naya's luminescent patterns flickered, and for a moment, the otherworldly aspects of her heritage faded away, leaving just a woman looking at a man who had somehow become incredibly important to her. "Ethan," she began, but was interrupted by another violent tremor from above. The holographic Corvain spoke again, his tone urgent, and Naya's expression shifted to one of hope. "Wait, there might be another way. He says the guardian bond doesn't Have to be permanent if there's someone willing to share the burden. Someone whose neural patterns are compatible. What does that mean? Ethan asked. Though he suspected he already knew. It means to consciousness working together, supporting each other through the interface. The bond would be between us as much as with the complex. Naya's star-filled eyes searched his face, but it would change us both. We'd be connected on a level that goes beyond anything either of our species has experienced. The sound of plasma. Cutters grew louder, and voices could be heard echoing down the corridors, rough, aggressive tones speaking in Galactic, common about securing the tech and eliminating witnesses. They're through, Rex reported tersely. Armed search teams spreading through the upper levels. Ethan looked at Naya, at the holographic figures of her ancestors, at the crystal array that hummed with the accumulated knowledge of an ancient civilization. The choice was clear, even if the consequences weren't. Tell me what I need to do, he said. Naya's face lit up with gratitude and something deeper, a recognition that went beyond words. Are you certain? Once we begin the interface, we'll be bound together. Our thoughts, our emotions, our very life forces will be intertwined. Ethan stepped closer to her, close enough to see the complex patterns of light playing across her skin, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her alien heritage. Naya Severin, I've known you for less than 2 days, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. She reached out and took his hands, her touch sending pleasant tingles up his arms. Then together, we become the guardians of Chemia. The holographic ether began to fade, but not before Corvain stepped forward and placed a translucent hand on Naya's shoulder. When he spoke, Ethan somehow understood the words despite not knowing the language. May your love be the light that preserves what was and guides what shall be. As the pirates' voices grew closer and the crystal ray reached full resonance, Ethan and Naya stepped forward together toward their destiny, their hands intertwined, their hearts beating in synchrony with the ancient technology that would soon bind them together in ways neither fully comprehended. The awakening of Chemia had begun, and with it, a love story that would span the stars. The crystal ray pulsed with anticipation as Ethan and Naya approached hand in hand, the holographic ether fading into wisps of light around them. Above, the sounds of the pirates' advance grew louder, boots on metal walkways, harsh voices, shouting orders, the whine of energy weapons being charged. Together, Naya whispered, her luminescent patterns blazing so brightly they cast dancing shadows on the chamber walls. They pressed their palms simultaneously against the central crystal nodes, and Ethan's world exploded into sensation. Light flooded his mind, carrying with it the accumulated memories of an entire civilization, star charts spanning millennia, architectural marvels that defied physics, philosophical concepts that expanded his understanding of consciousness itself. But more than that, he felt Naya's presence merging with his own, her thoughts and emotions intertwining with his until he couldn't tell where he ended and she began. The bond settled into place like two puzzle pieces finding their perfect fit, and suddenly Ethan could perceive the entire Hemian complex, as if it were an extension of his own body. Every corridor, every chamber, every defensive system built into the crystalline matrix, it all sang to him, in harmonious frequencies that resonated in his bones. Incredible, he breathed, his voice echoing strangely as if spoken by two people. In perfect unison, Naya's eyes had taken on an inner luminescence that matched the crystal ray. I can feel them, she said, her enhanced awareness reaching through the complex. 12 intruders, heavily armed, their leader, her expression darkened, Captain Reeve Torin. His neural patterns are chaotic, violent. He's done this before. Many times, the sound of plasma fire suddenly erupted from the upper levels, followed by Rex's panicked voice over the communicator. They're cutting through the blast doors. Juno's trying to evacuate the surface team, but they're pinned down. Ethan felt a surge of protective fury that was amplified by his connection to Naya. Through their bond, he could sense her similar emotions, not just concern for their colleagues, but a deep, ancestral rage at seeing sacred knowledge threatened by those who would exploit it. The defensive systems, Naya said, her consciousness reaching deeper into the complex's matrix. They're still functional. I can activate them. What kind of defenses? Ethan asked. though part of him already knew through their shared connection. Energy barriers, gravitational distortion fields, neural disruption arrays, she replied, her hands moving among the crystal nodes with increasing confidence. Non-lethal, but effective. The Aethery built this place to preserve knowledge, not to kill. Through the complex's sensor network, they watched as Captain Torin and his crew advanced through the excavated areas. Torin was a big man with cybernetic implants covering half his face, his remaining eye glowing with artificial enhancement. His team moved with military precision, their weapons sweeping corners and scanning for threats. There, Torin growled, pointing toward the main entrance to the underground complex. The energy readings are coming from below. Whatever's down there, it's worth a fortune on the black market. Ethan felt Naya's consciousness merge deeper with the ancient systems, and suddenly the excavation site began to respond. Crystalline formations that had seemed decorative revealed themselves as sophisticated energy conduits, channeling power from the planet's core into defensive matrices that had lain dormant. For millennia. The first barrier manifested as a shimmering wall of force that appeared directly in front of Torin's advance team. Two pirates walked straight into it and were gently but firmly repelled, their weapons clattering harmlessly to the ground. What the hell? Torin snarled, firing his plasma rifle at the barrier. The energy bolts were absorbed harmlessly, causing the crystalline structures around them to glow brighter. Captain, one of his subordinates called out nervously, the energy readings are spiking all around us. Whatever's activating this stuff, it's big. Deep in the chamber, Ethan and Naya worked in perfect synchronization, their combined consciousness, directing the complex's defenses with precision that neither could have achieved alone. Through their bond, Ethan could feel Naya's inherited knowledge guiding their actions, while his human intuition helped them adapt the ancient systems to the current threat. Gravitational distortion, Section 7, Naya announced, and suddenly, 3 pirates found themselves walking in slow motion, their movements sluggish as localized gravity fields made each step feel like walking through deep water. Neural disruption, entrance corridor, Ethan added, and Torin himself stumbled as a wave of disorientation washed over him, his cybernetic enhancements sparking and flickering. But the pirates weren't giving up easily. Torin pulled a massive device from his pack, a quantum resonance disruptor, designed to overload energy-based defensive systems. Captain, no, one of his crew shouted. If you use that here, it could destabilize the entire complex. I don't care if it brings down the whole planet, Torin snarled, activating the device. Nobody makes a fool of Reeve Torin. The disruptor sent waves of chaotic energy through the crystalline matrix, and Ethan and Naya felt it like physical pain transmitted directly through their neural link. The defensive systems flickered and wavered as the ancient harmonics were overwhelmed by discordant frequencies. He's tearing apart the crystal network, Naya gasped, her luminescent patterns flickering erratically. If this continues, the entire repository could collapse. Ethan felt her pain as if it were his own, and with it came a surge of protective instinct that surprised him with its intensity. Through their bond, he could sense the depth of what they stood to lose. Not just the archaeological treasure of the complex, but the living connection Naya had found to her ancestral heritage. Then we stop him, Ethan said with grim determination. Together, they reached deeper into the crystal matrix than either had dared before, accessing systems that the Aethery had reserved for only the most desperate circumstances. The entire complex began to resonate at frequencies that made the air itself sing. And suddenly Torin's disruptor was not just being countered, it was being turned against itself. Impossible, Torin breathed as his own weapon began to spark and smoke in his hands. Not impossible, came a voice that echoed from every crystal surface in the excavation site. Ethan and Naya, speaking in perfect unison through the complex's acoustic systems, just protected by those who understand its true value. The harmonized frequencies reached a crescendo, and suddenly every piece of technology in the pirates' possession simply stopped working. Weapons powered down, communication devices went silent, even their environmental suits switched to minimal life support. Torin looked around at his helpless crew, then up at the crystalline spires that now blazed within her. Light, this isn't over, he shouted, Word will get out about what's here. Others will come. Let them, the unified voice replied. Chemia has its guardians now. As the pirates retreated to their ships, Ethan and Naya slowly withdrew from the deepest levels of the crystal matrix, their consciousness returning to their own bodies in the chamber below. The transition left them both gasping, leaning against each other for support as the intensity of their shared experience settled into memory. That was Ethan began, then realized he didn't have words for what they had just experienced. Incredible, Naya finished, her star-filled eyes meeting his. I've never felt anything like that level of connection, of unity. It was like we were two voices singing the same song. Their faces were very close now, and Ethan became acutely aware of the warmth radiating from her skin, the way her luminescent patterns pulsed in rhythm with his own heartbeat, the bond they had forged in the crystal matrix had changed them both, creating an intimacy that went beyond anything either had experienced before. Naya, he said softly, reaching up to trace one of the glowing patterns on her cheek. What we have now, what we've become together, it's not just about protecting the complex anymore, is it? She leaned into his touch, her eyes closing briefly, before opening to meet his gaze with an intensity that took his breath away. No, she whispered. It's about us, about what we can build together, what we can become. When their lips met, it was like the completion of a circuit, sending warm energy flowing between them that had nothing to do with ancient technology, and everything to do with two hearts recognizing their perfect match. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, then deeper as they gave in to feelings that had been building since their first meeting. When they finally separated, both were glowing, literally, in Naya's case, her patterns blazing with joy and contentment. So what happens? Nah, Ethan asked, still holding her close. Naya smiled, the expression transforming her already beautiful features into something radiant. Now we build a life together, as guardians of the past and architects of the future. Above them, the sounds of the pirates' ships departing echoed through the complex, but Ethan and Naya barely noticed. They had found something far more precious than ancient technology or archaeological treasures. They had found each other, and in doing so, had discovered that love truly could transcend any boundary, even those between worlds.